little mini album that's going to go inside of the camera box. And so you're going to need some heavyweight chipboard for that. There are going to be 2 pieces for the front and back cover that measure the same, and those are your 5 3/4 by 4 3/4 inch pieces. And then the spine piece is 1 1/4 by 5 3/4. To prepare your chipboard after it's cut, you are going to want to put adhesive on the back. I used the score tape sheets, and then I fill in with my remnants. Like this one, I had to just use some little scrap pieces. We're going to wrap these individually. It's the lay flat method that Tammy uses and she came up with, and so I think that's going to work best for this book. So now that I have my chipboard ready, I want to prep some of my cardstock. So the pieces that we need for the cover, these are you'll need 2 pieces that are 7 3/4 by 6 3/4, and this is in your cutting guide. And then the spine piece, we're going to make that 4 1/4 by 7 3/4. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by getting our let's go ahead and do this one too, sorry. The spine that we're going to use this piece to cover the inside is 5 5/8 by 4 1/2. Hinge 5 1/2 by 2 1/2. So these are the 5 pieces we'll start with. Now, because you have the cutting guide, a lot of times it's easier to cut all your paper first and then label it with sticky notes, just like I did. That's how I usually do just about everything, is with sticky notes. Some people like to write on their paper, but for some reason I don't do that. So using the spacers from Country Craft Creations, we can easily put our chipboard down on our paper with a 1-inch border. And so these are sold in packs of 3 pieces. You have a 1-inch bar, you have 2 1-inch pieces, and then you have a 1 1/2. And these are both 12-inch, all of these are 12 inches long. So let's start with our 1-inch pieces and our larger piece of paper for the cover. So once you place that down, we're going to go ahead and place our 1-inch borders on here so we can put it exactly in the right spot. And your chipboard, remove the backing, and we'll just lay that right on that red paper. I'm using red. Of course, you can use any color you want. I thought sometimes when I work with white, my fingers get really dirty and I don't like to see the markings on the paper. Now when you see this chipboard, ignore the measurements that are written on here because they're not correct. The sticky notes were correct. Okay. Go ahead and press that down. Let's just move that to the side and do the other piece the same way. So I'm placing the 7 3/4, the 7 3/4 going down the side and the 6 3/4 across the top. That's how I'm laying it down. Move the backing. Oops, I have one more little piece I forgot. Bump it right up against those 2 pieces so that you have that 1-inch border. And while we have these out, let's go ahead and move to the spine piece. The spine piece is the one that's 4 1/4 by 7 3/4. So now we want different size wings. So we're going to put we still want a 1-inch border across the top when we lay it down. And instead of 1 inch on the side, we want 1 inch. Okay. So I'm going to use the 1-inch piece. 1 on the top, 1 1/2 on the side. And then go ahead and get your chipboard. Remove the backing and we'll lay that down. Okay, we're done with these spacers. Now, if you are very familiar with the mini album cover method that Tammy uses, you can fast forward this part because I do it exactly like she does. I'm just going to go now and burnish all of my paper real well onto the chipboard. Now there is one part that I do differently, and I do like to still miter my corners at an angle for the most part. Sometimes I do the squares on the corner, but I kind of go back and forth. For some reason, I still sometimes struggle if I use the squares. I can still sometimes see a little bit of the chipboard, so I don't know if I'm not being careful enough, or if it's, I don't know. I just sometimes don't do it as well as I would like. So what you want to do now is take your score tape, and I use the 1/4 inch, and you're going to put it around the perimeter of the chipboard. Again, ignore that. On your front and back cover, we'll do those first. So let's go ahead and do the perimeter of the chipboard. And I was having, when I first started, I was having problems ripping the score tape so that it wasn't nice and even or neat. And I see that when you lay your score tape down, if you give yourself quite a long tail and rip, it usually works a lot easier. I don't know if that will help you or not, but so I just push down at the end, give myself a little bit of a tail and rip. When I tried to rip it real close, I couldn't get it to tear nice. So like if I would try and just do it like this and tear, it doesn't work out very well for me. I'm going to go ahead and burnish the backings or the tape onto the chipboard so that when we lift off the backing, it doesn't take the tape with it. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and angle my corners. Now, when you angle your corners, like I said, if you prefer the squared off method, you can totally do that. I'm going to use a mitering tool that I have to make sure that I always cut it at the right amount of space from the corner. So right now you see me bending this. This is just to kind of train the paper so it knows where it needs to go and it's a little bit crisper edge. Okay, so again, you can cut out the square in the corner where right up to the corner of the chipboard and take those corners off. I am going to miter, sorry if I bumped the camera, I'm going to miter with a tool that tells me exactly where I need to cut to have the right amount of space to cover the corner of the chipboard. So do that to all 4 corners. And I'm going to do it to both pieces while I have it out. Oh, let me go ahead and bend this around the edges. To me, the cover is one of the most important things to take your time on and to make it nice and neat and smooth and crisp. That's the first thing people see when they look at your album, and so you want to take the time to make sure that it looks nice. Don't want a lot of glue showing and all that kind of stuff. You don't want the chipboard showing through your corners. Okay. So we are going to fully wrap the front and back cover. So we're going to place all 4 sides onto the chipboard. So now that we have our either your squares cut out or your mitered angled corners, let's go ahead and put score tape also on the perimeter of our cardstock. So I'm going to place it right up against the edge so that it lays nice and smooth onto my chipboard. I will fill in between the between the glue. What am I trying to say? I'm going to use glue in between the score tape and the chipboard just to fill in that empty spot. Again, while I'm doing this, I'll go ahead and do the other cover also at the same time. So really, I just use the score tape now mainly for my covers. Everybody has their own adhesive preference, so that's totally up to you how you want to put yours together. Some people just like to use the glue. Some people use a lot more tape, like they cover everything fully. Okay. I always miter again once I use score tape. I always do my long sides first. Get my art glitter glue ready. Make sure that it's not clogged. I've been having issues with that. I think it's time to clean it. I'm going to remove the backing on the long side, and then I'll remove the backing on all four sides of my chipboard. So you want to put glue right up against your chipboard so that the paper will attach and hold on real tight and smooth. And then I just fill in the art glitter glue right up to that score tape. Now my glue is not stopping coming out. Huh. There we go. So I let it sit just for a second. A lot of times that's good to let the glue just soak in a little bit, kind of softens the fibers a little bit. As you bring it up and over, make sure you're pulling tight, and I like to kind of move my hand up so that it's smooth. I always burnish it next. And then I always burnish the side so it's smooth. Let's repeat that. I'm going to go ahead and put the glue up against the chipboard. I'm going to fill in the middle. Why is my glue leaking? Bring it up and over. Kind of push up and out. And burnish. We'll repeat the same thing on this side, the short sides, but because I mitered mine at an angle, there's a little detail we have to address, and that is I have a little excess paper here in the corners, and so I want to smooth that down so that when I bring the paper up and over, it gets tucked around the corner of the chipboard. And so I'm going to use my fingernail, or you can use your bone folder and just kind of push down and flatten it. Okay. If you did the squares, you don't have to deal with that. So I just like to make sure that those are flat when I bring up my paper. And the last side we're going to do the same way. Tuck in those corners if you mitered at an angle. Now the front and back cover we do exactly the same way. So what we're doing to this one, you're going to do to the other piece that's 4 3/4 by 5 3/4 that we have for the other cover. Okay, so nice and smooth, crisp corners. That's what it should look like. Okay, do the other one exactly the same way. You should have your two pieces covered that are your front and back covers. So now as we do the spine, it is a little bit different. You do not wrap the two sides here. So I went ahead and folded my paper around the four sides and creased it. And I only am putting score tape on the short ends, the top and the bottom. And again, you can choose to cut out the squares. I'm going to go ahead and miter. This might be too severe of a miter. I think I'll go ahead and do the cutting of the four corners. So I'm taking the whole corner off. Another benefit of doing the four corners on this piece is it gives you more paper to attach to the front and back cover, because you're not angling, and it will just probably hold on a little bit better. Okay. So I'm going to just very slightly miter, the top and the bottom, so I don't have anything hanging over. Very slight. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and glue down these short ends. So I'll just remove the backing, and I'll place glue just like we did on the covers right up against the chipboard. And I'm just going to put some glue on here. I didn't use any score tape on the paper. I do want to make sure that I'm burnishing that end so it's nice and smooth and flat. Okay, and I'll do the other end. And I'm burnishing. All right, so the next part is to prepare the sides now so that we can attach them to the front and back cover. So we want to make sure that we don't have any overhang, and so I need to slightly miter my corners. And I just rest my scissors up against the chipboard so I don't cut down too far. And so these longer wings is what is going to help us attach the covers. When we attach these, we're going to have these wings to the raw side on the side where the chipboard shows. It's going to be attached on this side. But to do that, we're going to prepare it by turning it this way when we put it together. So one of the things you want to do is to make sure that your spine piece, the paper, is flexible. And so I bent it this way when I was getting ready, you know, to put it together. But now I'm also going to run my bone folder very carefully up against the chipboard here so that you'll see a strong indentation. And that's so that we can bump up that other piece of chipboard right up against it. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. depending on your cardstock. Hopefully you're using Artisan, it's the best, and it's got linen in it, and so it's much easier to work with and doesn't tear as easy or rip as easily, and it's a little bit more durable. So you'll see that I have a very defined piece of chipboard, and I'll be able to bump up my covers right up against there. Okay, now to do that we're going to add adhesive, and I'm going to add a little bit of score tape and a little bit of glue. So I'm going to place score tape on the very edge. I'm going to put one towards the center and one closer to the chipboard, but not all the way. I'm leaving about a 1/8, almost a 1/4 inch gap. Okay, and I'll do that to this side also. So about a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 of an inch away from the chipboard, and I'll fill in the rest with glue. Burnish that down. Okay, so we don't want any glue showing. So when I put glue on this close to the chipboard, I'm going to put it close, but I still am going to leave a little bit of a space just because I don't want any glue oozing out and leaving any marks or shiny parts. So get one of your covers ready. I'm going to remove the backing. I have a little bit of overhang of the tape, so I want to make sure I wrap that over so it doesn't hang off the end. So I'm going to place glue, and I usually do mine sideways. It's just easier for me to work. I kind of move the book a little bit. I'm going to fill in the center here with some glue. That gives me a little wiggle room if I have to move something, because the glue gives me a little bit of time. And I am putting glue here, but not all the way to the chipboard. Okay, so I'm going to place this right up against. I'm going to push down hard, and then I'm going to flip it over and burnish it. Now by making those wings a little bit longer, we covered our strip that was on the side, so it's a little bit more smooth. And we'll repeat the same process for the other side. Give that a chance to dry before I bend it. This again helps your book to lay flat, which is so nice. A lot of my books, when you open them up, the pages stand straight up. So it was awesome that Tammy came up with this technique, because not only is it easier, I think it makes your book easier to go through and look at this pictures inside. I'm filling in my glue. And I'm putting some close to the chipboard, but not right up against it. I'm going to line it up top and bottom. I'm going to push it up against the chipboard. I don't need any space. I'm going to press down and then turn it over and burnish. If you have any glue, try, oh, that's tape actually. Try and get that off there. It'll be covered by pattern paper, but little things like that kind of bother me. Okay, fabulous. So there is our cover. Now we are ready to cover the spine piece. And so that's the piece that was 5 5/8 by 4 1/2, and we're going to place it and center it on our chipboard, looking at the top and the bottom and the sides to try and get even amounts on all 4 sides. So we want this to lay flat, and we don't want any buckling. And so at this point, some people use score sheets on the back of their cardstock. I don't use full sheets. but I do place a lot of score tape on this part. So I'm going to go ahead and use my 3/8 instead of my 1/4. And I'll just start with by putting it around the perimeter of the cardstock. I learned the hard way that if you don't put enough adhesive, your paper does not lay smooth. You'll get bubbling when you when you open and close it. It just does not look as nice. I'm going to go ahead and fill in here. So you'll see that I leave a little bit of space. I guess that's just me being conservative with my supplies. I'm also going to place score tape on the actual book too. So I like to put score tape on the chipboard on the sides. Don't go all the way to the top and bottom because you don't want to see that tape poking through. And I know that I have tape on the perimeter of the cardstock, and so I know it's going to get covered anyway. So I like to put that like so. And I do like to run a piece on the side of the chipboard on the other piece. I don't want my book falling apart. And I'll go ahead and just put one in the middle. And that baby should stick just fine. So now, because I didn't use score sheets, it is a little bit more monotonous when it comes time to putting it down, because we got to remove all the backing of these individual strips. So I did that one first, and now I'll do the paper that I have. I probably will fill in a little bit of glue in between where I don't have the score tape. Oops. So as I am recording this, we are currently having a blizzard, and so our students, I teach school, and our students have an e-learning day. So that means I am available for questions, and I'm by my email, and I'm still checking school stuff, but we upload activities for the kids to work on through Google Classroom. So they have kind of a snow day, kind of a work day, but that way we don't have to make up the days at the end of the year. But teachers and students alike always appreciate a surprise day off. Okay. Now my glue is clogged. I'll just go and fill in a little bit of glue here and there. I honestly feel that the tape makes it lay smoother. So I'm going to turn mine sideways like this, and then I'm just going to look to make sure I'm putting the same amount of space at the top as I am the bottom. And press down and burnish. It's always good to burnish. You want everything nice and flat. And again, before I bend this, I'm going to go ahead and work on my hinge just to make sure everything's set and dried, has a chance to adhere. So I'm just going to move this off to the side, and we're going to work on our hinge piece. All right. Now I used to make my hinges and use a bunch of score tape. Now I use glue. clean up my mess here a little bit. All right, so that piece that you're going to need is the 5.5 by 2.5 piece. And we are going to place, this book only has, what was it? 2 hinges, but we have quite a few flaps, and it's a smaller container, so we can't make our book too big, and we can't embellish the cover too much because it's going to be inside of that camera box, and so we don't want it to bump up against the box and ruin whatever decorations we have. So let's go ahead. I'm going to get my that's not the one I use. We're going to just score it every 1/2 inch, so I'm going to start with 1/2 inch. Again, the 2.5 is across the top. Going from 1/2, I'll go to the 1 inch. I will go to 1.5. And let's see, space, and the 2, sorry. So 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2. So this hinge does not have any wings, and when I say wings, it used to be that we would make it so that there were side pieces that we would attach to the book. Now we make them just so that the hinge lays on that center spine on the chipboard with no wings, so that if something were to happen, it would be easy to salvage our book. We wouldn't have to rip the covers. We could just take out that hinge piece. I'm going to go ahead and start burnishing my score lines. So what we do is we take the first 2 1/2 inch pieces and we're going to glue them together, and that's going to become our first hinge. Okay, so then that third rectangular piece is our gusset, and then the last 2 pieces we will combine to make the next hinge. Okay, so there were total of 5 sections. Sections 1 and 2 we're going to glue together to make like a mountain. We'll do nothing with the third one, and then we'll glue sections 4 and 5 together so that it looks like so when we're done. And we'll attach our pages to those. So I'm just going to turn it upside down here and glue my pieces 1 and 2 together. I'm generous with the glue on this part, and then if any starts to seep out, I have a dry wet wipe to catch it. So go ahead and press down. I'll make sure that that adheres real well. The hinge is an important component, so we want it to be strong. And let's go ahead and glue sections 4 and 5 together. So you can see I have a full amount of glue. Press the 2 together. And we're burnishing it. And there is our hinge. Like I said, only 2. When we place it in our book, now we want to crease our book so we know exactly where our spine piece is, so that we can center the hinge on that spine. And when it's laid out like this, it's kind of hard to tell. So I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to start lifting up one side and start tucking in the paper into that crease. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other side. I slowly start bringing it up and tucking the paper into the crease. so now let's just center our hinge on our spine. You want to center it side to side, top to bottom. I'm just going to use the art glitter glue on the gusset to attach it. Okay, come on, glue. My opinion is it's the best glue out there, but boy, when it gets clogged, it drives me crazy. Don't be afraid to use plenty of glue. As you push it down, if you see excess squeezing out, get a dry wet wipe and start cleaning it up. I'm going to turn it sideways so I can see the top and the bottom. I'm going to push in my that looks centered. And push, 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 burnish, burnish. We do not want that to come up. All right. I have a little excess glue here. All right. Now, I know it's kind of late for me, but some people do like to put pattern paper on their spine before they put their hinge on. I usually just go back and put a 1/2 inch strip, well, it's actually 3/8 inch strip in between here. And sometimes I put it on the outside, sometimes I don't. Sometimes you don't even really see it much because once you put your pages in, you don't always see that. But so we obviously will put paper on the sides, but let's go ahead and add all of our flips, flaps, pockets, and all that kind of good thing. So I'll kind of give you a walkthrough as to what it looks like once we have the book constructed, but this is without it being decorated. So our book will open, and again it will lay flat. This flap will go up and you'll have a pocket. I use the punch board to make a little thumb hole. You can use a circle punch or you can leave it straight going across. If you want to alter yours a little bit, you might want a pocket on the top, totally up to you. The first page, right now it flaps open, but we'll put seam binding on it when we cover it to use as a tie closure so it doesn't stay opened. But these come up and down, but then they also open, so you have quite a bit of space there. Now, because these aren't closed with seam binding, as you turn the page, I'm going to make sure I don't have anything in the way there that will get smashed. So right here you'll see I have a little corner piece on each. This comes undone, but it's also tucked into the side and comes out. So we have an opening on our base page, and that went inside, and this little piece keeps it closed. So then this opens to the right. You'll see a belly band to hold papers. I'll go ahead and put that back in. And I'll tuck it into that triangular piece to keep it closed. The other side does the same thing. Then this will slide out, opens, belly band. And then you'll see that the other side repeats. So both pages are constructed the same, front and back covers are constructed the same. So it's a real simple basic album. It would be good for a young person for their birthday if they have a party and have a few pictures to put in. So we are going to put together the front and back covers first. And then we'll put together our pages. So for the front and back cover, we're going to need two pieces that are 5.5 by 3, and that's for the small pockets here and here. And then this is for our flaps that come up, and those measure 6 1/8 by 4.5. So two of these also. So let's go ahead and prep these before we attach them. Let's start with our flaps that are 6 1/8 by 4.5. Place your 6 1/8 inch piece across the top and score at 1/2. Do that to both of them. Six 1/8 across the top, score at 1/2. Let's go ahead and continue scoring. So take your 5.5 by 3, place the 5.5 across the top, score at 1/2, rotate it once, score at 1/2, rotate it one more time and score at 1/2. Again, 5.5 across the top, 1/2, rotate once, 1/2, rotate one more time, 1/2. So let's go ahead and burnish our flaps, that 1/2 inch. Now some people might want to, if you have corner punches, you might want to round it. You might have a decorative corner punch. You can totally do that. But on these pieces, once I burnish, I am going to lightly taper, miter right there. So we have an angle and we don't see any paper sticking out when we attach it to the book. Okay, so I slightly angled those two corners on the 1/2 inch piece. Do the same thing on the other one. Slightly angle it there, and slight angle there. So pockets, again, if you have a circle punch or a punch board and you want a thumb hole, now's the time to get that. I'm going to go ahead and burnish my score lines first. I'm going to go ahead and take off the corners where the two lines intersect. You'll see a square. I'm going to cut at a diagonal. Make sure you don't cut into the corner. So make sure you don't cut into that corner right there. And then I am going to slightly miter at the top on that 1/2 inch piece on both sides. Same thing to the other one. I like to burnish first and then do my cutting. Take out the corner at an angle and slightly angle at the top on the 1/2 inch. So there are the two pockets. At this point I am going to use my punch board So I'm going to go ahead and push the 1/2 inch piece down underneath, tuck it below, then I line it up at 2 1/8. This end piece is at the 2 1/8 and punch. Okay. I tuck the left hand 1/2 inch piece underneath, then I line it up at 2 1/8 and punch. That's all I'm using that for, and I'll have to use it again when we do the pattern paper. So grab your book. If there's one, look at your book and see if there's one side you want to be the front and one side the back, or top and bottom. right, so we are going to adhere our pocket, and we want to make sure that it doesn't get in the way of the spine. So I like to make sure that when I lay it down, I have just about 1/8 of an inch on the left hand side, and it still clears that middle piece when I fold the book. I'm going to go ahead and put glue. On all 3 of those 1/2 inch pieces. Tuck in the sides and line it up on the bottom. You have about a 1/8 inch space also. Make sure it's straight and then burnish it down. Have a little excess glue here. It'll dry clear. That's one good thing about that glue. Okay. And now I'll attach the top flap. So when I lay this down, I want to make sure that it lays right on top of my pocket. So you want to make sure it's lined up correctly. And again, I'll have just a little bit of space at the top. So before I lay it down, make sure it's lining up with my pocket. And there we go. Burnish it on. So repeat the same thing for the back cover. Pocket first, then flap. We have 2 base pages to put together now. You'll need 2 pieces that are 4.5 by 5.5, and then the 2 pieces that are 4.5 by 6.5. The 4.5 by 5.5, we don't do any scoring. The one that measures 4.5 by 6.5, we need to make 2 score marks. I've already done one of them. So place your 6.5 inch piece across the top, and we just need to score it 1/2 inch on each end. So I'm going to do 1/2, and you can turn around and do the other half, or you can just go to the 6 inch and score at the 6 inch, which is what I'm going to do. We need to burnish those and attach the other pieces on top so that we have pages, and it will have an opening at the end so we can put our insert in there. So then I like to take my paper and make sure that it measures and lines up exactly the way it's supposed to see if I need to do any light trimming. And I'm going to take just a hair, just a tiny hair off this one. And I like that much better. Okay, so I am going to slightly miter these just so that I don't have any paper showing through when I place the top piece on. You don't need to do much. Might as well do this one too while I'm at it. And one more. So then there's always the debate, do you put your pages in the book and then decorate, or do you decorate and then put them in the book? To be real honest, I've done it both ways, and I still do it both ways. It just kind of depends. I don't know what makes me determine one way or the other, but you'll see that on this first one I went ahead and put the pages in, and then I'll go back and decorate. This one I'll probably decorate and then put them in. Just variety is the spice of life, I guess. Okay, so let's go ahead and adhere. I'm just going to put glue on one side first so that I can make sure I get it lined up. And I'm going to place my paper top. And burnish. Go slow. I hate crooked pages. And now if you've lined it up correctly, this should just lay right on top once you put the glue on. Fold that down, smooth it out. You want a flat page. And let's do the same thing to the other one. So just do one side at a time. Some people do use their scoreboard as a way to bump it up against there and make sure it's lined up. I don't need to do that. I need to see it with my eyes. And burnish. And then this one should just be able to be pushed down flat and line up, and it does. And let's close up the other end. If it's not laying flat and you feel it's too bubbly, just hold one end and kind of burnish up and out on the top here, and it should straighten it out. There are 2 pages. We do have 2 inserts that we tuck into the side of those pages. So you'll need 2 insert pieces, and those are the ones that measure 8 by 5 3/8. So we just want to burnish or score those in half. So place the 8 inches across the top and score at 4. And again, if you have decorative corner punches, you might want to do that on yours. It's up to you. So it's 8 by 5 3/8, the 8 inches across the top, score at 4. Burnish. Make sure that they line up. You might have to adjust a little bit as you're burnishing. So once I fold it over, I just make sure the corners are lined up, and then once they're lined up, I push down on it and I score towards the fold so that it doesn't move at all. And then there are your 2 insert pages. All right, so now let's move on to the next part. Let me get my paper ready. I'm going to have you gather the pieces in, the rest of them, for building our pages. You're going to need 4 that measure 4 1/2 by 6. Have those ready. Have 2 that are 1 1/4 by 6 1/2 ready. You need 1 piece that measures 3 by 3. And then you have 2 that measure 4 3/4 by 5 1/2. Okay, let's go ahead and do all of our scoring. So let's take the ones that measure 4 3/4 by 5 1/2 and place the 4 3/4 inches across the top and score at 1/2. You're going to want to do that on both pieces. Move those to the side. Let's do the belly band strap. So those are the 1 1/4 by 6 1/2. Place the 6 1/2 across the top, and we're going to score at 1/2 on each end. So you can do half and at 6 if you want. Grab the 2 pieces that are, the 4 pieces. I already did some of them. 4 that are 4 1/2 by 6, and we have 2 score marks to make on those. So place the 6 inches across the top, score at 1/2 and 3 1/4. The 6 inches is across the top. You're going to do half and 3 1/4 to all 4 of those. All right. We'll need to come back to this in a little bit, but for right now, let's go ahead and start our burnishing. So the belly bands, let's just fold those 2 ends and burnish. So any scraps that you have from cutting, you can always use those to mat, use as mats and put paper on them so that people can add pictures and put them in the pockets. So I don't throw away the big scraps ever. Okay, we have our belly bands prepped. Let's do the burnishing on the 4 3/4 by 5 1/2. Those are flaps on our pages, doors. I am going to lightly angle that on the top and the bottom, just slightly. And slightly taper. I don't know, taper, miter, is that this? I think it's the same thing. All right, so we need to burnish these a little bit differently. So these, you have one at the top of your page, so you're going to have a 1/2 inch strip that's attached to the top of your book. It will fold out, or down I guess I should say, and then you can also bring it up. So then you're also going to need one that goes to the bottom, but we have to kind of do it the reverse of that. So here are my 2 top pages. I burnished the 1/2 inch back, and at the 3 1/4 I brought it forward. So do 2 of those. The other 2, you're going to burnish the 1/2 inch and then bring the 3 1/4 inch down and burnish, and that's going to be the bottom part of it. So it will look like this. 1/2 inch at the top, 1/2 inch at the bottom. They both open to the middle. So I'll fold the 1/2 inch back to the bottom piece, and then I'll bring that 3 1/4 inch score towards the front. Okay, so let's attach what we need to for this, what we've done so far, and grab one of your base pages, and we're going to have, I think I'm going to miter these 2 just a little bit. So I got to go back and do it to all 4. Oh, I already did it to that one. Just need to finish real quick. Okay. All right, so this one is going to go at the top. Okay, so the crease is going towards the center, or the fold I should say is at the center. And I'm going to turn it sideways because I can see it better. All the way to the top of the page. Make sure it's lined up side to side also. Then you burnish. Okay, the other piece, the bottom, we're going to adhere that 1/2 inch to the bottom. The fold is at the center. I'm almost put it on wrong. Line it up at the bottom and check your sides to make sure it's lining up. And then you can burnish. And they should meet right in the center. Okay, let's do that to the other base page because the fronts are the same. That's not true, hold on. I mean, it's true that we do it the same. But where's my, do I do them both? Nope, I did one on the front and then the other one's the back page. So let's just do one page at a time, sorry. I changed my mind. All right, so that's page 1 the front. We're going to do the back. So turn it over. Let's go ahead and put a belly band on the center of the back page. And I don't miter these 1/2 inch pieces just because you're going to have a piece of paper on top of it. You won't see it, and it's in the center, it's not on the edge. And you can measure if you want. I eyeball. Just put it in the center. That looks pretty good. All right. Now, we're going to go ahead and attach the flap, and we're going to attach it, this one, on the right-hand side of the base page. Again, I'm going to turn mine sideways, but this is the right side. And mine is, I don't like that. I'm going to trim this real quick. I don't like that. It's just a hair off. Let's see if that's better. Much better. All right, let me put glue on it again. I know better. I should have done a dry fit first and then put the glue on. Sometimes when you're using different cutters, which I do, you might be off just a hair on your cutting. But I have different cutters that I like for different things. I can't possibly be the only one out there who does that. All right. So then let's go ahead and prep that 3x3 square so that we can have our corner pocket on our angled pocket on the flap so that the insert stays down. So here's what I'm going to do. So it's 3x3. You're going to cut it on the diagonal so that you have 2 triangles. So line up the 2 opposite corners. That looks pretty good. Okay. And now that you have the 2 triangles, we're going to score those so that they can become little corner pockets. Now you need a left side and a right side. So I like to look at it kind of like that. So I need to do a 1/2 inch score. And then I turn it once and do a 1/2 inch score. So it's just a tiny little corner pocket. And then I have to remember, okay, on this one I need a 1/2 inch score. On the opposite side, turn it once, 1/2 inch. So when you burnish those, you're going to notice that you have some overlaps. Let's burnish them first, or you'll see pieces sticking out that shouldn't be there. And just take your scissors and trim that excess off. Rest your scissors up against the top piece and trim it off. Fold the other one, do the same thing. Trim off that little excess that hangs off the side here. Because it's a pocket, we're going to take out that corner at an angle. So that's what we have. Same thing on the other piece. And then take out the corner. Get rid of my scraps. All right. So this is our page 1. This is the back. The insert will be on this side and will come over, so we need to have this pocket, this angled pocket on the right hand side. Okay, down here on the right. So place glue on your 1/2 inch pieces. Line it up, bottom and side. And burnish it down. Okay, so if you want to see what that looks like, we'll have our insert tucked inside, and as it comes to the gotta tuck it inside. As it comes to the front, that tucks into that little pocket, like so. So now we need to do the opposite side. So grab your other base page. Now this one's kind of done reverse. So we want a mirrored image. So when we open up our book, these two pages mirror one another. So this is the front. Let's go ahead and place our belly band. Center it. Get rid of excess glue. Okay, so this flap is going to be placed on this side, on the left hand side. So the piece that was 4 3/4 by 5 1/2 that we scored at a 1/2 is going to be attached on the left. So I'm going to do a dry fit because my last one was a hair too big and I didn't like that overhang. This one is too, just a hair. Yep, that's the way I like it. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to the left hand side. Just make sure it lines up top and bottom. this angled pocket goes on the left hand side down here, bottom left. So when you go to mat this, you're going to want to, if this was a 3 by 3 and we took a 1/2 inch off each, you're just going to want to cut a square and then to cut it on the diagonal. That's 1/8 of an inch smaller. That'll be in your cutting guide. But you don't want to try and make the triangle fit, like cut out a triangle. You want to cut out a square and then cut it at the diagonal. I'll show you. Okay, then we take an insert. And as we put it in, we slide it underneath that pocket. So now we have our mirrored image here. So then when I turn this over, I need to do this part, the accordion flaps. How did I get that extra piece of paper? So remember the top one, the 1/2 inch at the top, the fold goes to the center. And I'm going to turn it. I'm going to take that insert out. It's playing with, I can see a little bit of overhang. I don't like that. Yep, there, it's lined up. And then take the bottom one, again, 1/2 inch at the bottom, fold to the center. Now, before you start matting, remember we do have to add seam binding for the closure, and so whenever you add seam binding, you put it underneath your pattern paper. So hold up on putting your pattern paper on this page. Alright, so what we're going to end up doing is putting seam binding up here and here, so that when we close these we can bring it to the front and tie it. Okay, so those are, see how easy and fast? Those are our pages. I'm going to go ahead and decorate them before I put them into the book. Now you do have the measurements for the pattern paper in your cutting guide, so I'm going to go ahead and get my papers cut, and we'll take a look at which papers I use for what parts. And there's pictures that are included in your cutting guide also, but I will show you how to apply the seam binding and stuff so that you don't forget to add it. I started doing the pattern paper on my cover. I thought I'd come on and show you. You have the measurements for the matting inside of your cutting guide, but one thing that I did is I made it like a little flap, and so I could put pictures or journaling in here on the top. But if you did the punch board for the thumb hole, you cut this paper 1/8 of an inch shorter than what our pocket was, and so we had folded back the 1/2 inch pocket and then put the paper at 2 1/8 in our punch board. So because this is 1/8 of an inch smaller, we are going to go to the line a little bit before, in between the 2 and the 1/8 on your punch board with your pattern paper. Otherwise your thumb hole won't be in the right spot. So a little bit before the 1/8, but not yet at the 2. Okay, hope that helps. Also, when you are getting ready to do the pages, you have this little triangular corner. So when I measured the corner, it was 2 inches tall and 2 inches across. So I cut out a square that was 1 7/8 by 1 7/8. Now because my paper's directional, I had to do this 2 times with the other paper. So like this was directional too. So I just did one for this paper and then I couldn't use the other half, but that's okay. I mean, it's a tiny piece. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and cut this at the diagonal now that I have this at 1 7/8 and 1 7/8. And so just watch it. Be careful if you have directional paper. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory, I think. You just cut according to the measurements in the cutting guide. One thing that I sometimes struggle with is when you have a belly band and getting this paper underneath and you've got glue on it and you're getting glue all over the place and it gets stuck. Sometimes it's okay, and this is one of those times where if you just want to tuck it underneath and then lift this up and put glue here and then lift this up and put glue under here, this isn't going to go anywhere because you've got that belly band and it's still going to lay flat. So it might be easier just to go ahead and tuck it underneath and then put your adhesive on. And then you can go back and put on your belly band paper, and you might want to put some sort of ephemera piece on here also. And then what do I have for the other paper? I just have this cut out for this side, and I'll go back and look at my sticker sheet and see what types of things are on there. So also we need to look at the flaps and putting our seam binding on so that they don't flap everywhere. So I did this one already. Okay, and then I have that on there. So I'm going to show you where the seam binding goes. I cut 2 pieces that were about 16 inches each. Okay, so this is actually my page 2, the back. And so you can put all your pattern paper on except underneath this top flap. This is where you're going to place your seam binding in the center. Just going to put a little piece here, and then if you fold this one down and find your center, you're going to put a piece of seam binding there also. So once you put your seam binding down, then you can put on your pattern paper. So like I said, it was about 16 inches. Then I got it wet and scrunched it up. So the nice thing about this seam binding, just get yourself a little bit of water. Sorry about my camera. And I just ball it up in my hand, squirt it a little bit, and then I just roll it around in there. Okay. So I'm going to use both glue and a strip of score tape. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to eyeball the center. That I'm not that concerned about getting it a hair off, so I'll just put a little tiny piece of a little bit of glue. I'm going to lay this on top. I have about an inch there, and then I just go ahead and take a piece of score tape, and I want to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, so I just kind of put that on top here, and then just remember to take the backing off before you put your pattern paper on. I don't want any excess. I'm going to trim this a little bit. I don't like that. Then you're going to do the same thing on the other side with the other piece of seam binding. So I got to get this one scrunched up. Now once I have the 2 pieces tied together in the front, if it's a little bit long I trim it, but I did knot the ends so that it doesn't keep unraveling. So I don't do that. I cut it extra long, and then when I trim it, I only trim it after I knot it. When I say knot it, I'm talking about at the end here so that it doesn't fray. So I'm kind of eyeballing where this seam binding is up here so that they line up. And get your score tape. Then once you have all this pattern paper on, then it's fun to go back and start your embellishing. Now be careful with the embellishing though, because it is going to be in a box, and so there's not a lot of extra room, so you got to be careful. Most of your embellishments should be more flat, like the ephemera and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish my pattern paper and embellishing, and then I'll come back and show you what it looked like the way I did it. Again, there's pictures in your cutting guide also, so you know what papers I used for what section. Once you have all of your pages decorated the way you want, it is time to put them into your book. And so on the hinges, we're going to put glue on each side. Now you'll notice that I did angle my hinges. Mine felt like they were just a hair too long with my pages to put on, and so I just cut them at a slight angle so that they would rest on there a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do, like I said, is put glue on each side of the hinge. I'm then going to slide this on, and then I'm going to hold it for a second, and then I'm going to bend it over to make sure that it can lay down. Okay, so I will do the back page first, and then I'm going to do the front page exactly the same way. Put glue on each side of the hinge, open it up, slide it on. Now make sure you've done a dry run. You might not need to trim your hinges. They might fit just fine. And for some reason, when I put this one on, I have to open the doors to make it easier, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it's kind of bulky or I can't see very well. There we go. Nope, I gotta open these. I don't know why that's giving me a problem, but so I'm going to open up these doors just to make sure that it fits. And it does. And then I'll rest it down so that I know that it lays flat. Okay, so both pages are done the same way, so I'm going to go ahead and do the back page, and then you'll do the front page the same way. Make sure that my glue is not clogged. I am generous with the glue. I don't want those hinges coming off. All the way up near the top. Okay. Turn it sideways so I can see it a little bit better. Okay, so it's on the hinge. I'm going to just kind of pinch it together or squeeze it together for a second so it grasps onto that hinge, and I'm going to slightly bend it over to make sure that it will lay flat. And I'm going to continue that pressure, and I'm going to bring it to the other side, push down. All right, and then we'll do the next page exactly the same way. It's time to prepare our box. Now I will tell you, I am on the mission to find the best way to make a box. I've tried different ways. Today I'm going to try it a little bit different. I haven't found one yet that I'm totally excited about, so we'll see what happens. The chipboard pieces you're going to need, there's 2 of them that are 4 1/4 by 6, 2 that are 4 1/4 by 2, and then 1 that's 2 by 6, and you're going to want to put adhesive on the back so that it lays smooth. The paper that we're going to need, this one is 8 by 12. I have a sticky note here to show you that. So 8 by 12. Now I am going to wrap part of this like the way we used to, as one long piece, okay? Because the fewer seams I can get, the better. And so we'll do the side pieces the new way that Tammy does, and we're going to wrap it to the outside because that will be covered with paper. It'll all make sense once we get started. But so chipboard, the 8 by 12 piece. For these 2 small pieces, you're going to need 5 by 6 1/4 inch papers, 2 of those. Again, this is in your cutting guide. And we are going to cover this bottom spine piece, which is the base of our box, with a 5 7/8 by 4 inch piece. Okay. Now to make our corners rounded, this paper, once you have this Carta Bella cardstock, a piece on each side, is super durable. So you'll be surprised at how firm it is. But these are the rounded corners. You're going to need 2 that are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Okay. So let's go ahead and start the base of the main part of our box. Okay, So I am going to be using, now in the past I've done a 1/4 inch gap between these, and I think that's a little bit too much when I'm making a box. So I'm going to use this as a guide, and that's my Tim Holtz ruler, and that's about 1/8 of an inch separation. I also usually put score tape in between these, and I'm not going to do that. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and lay my chipboard down. Let me get my scoreboard, it's just easier to work on that. Actually, I'm not going to. Nope, I'm going to do it. I'll just do it this way. I'm going to get my other ruler here. Okay. So I'm going to place these an inch from the bottom here. And I want to kind of space out my pieces to see. I don't have a full inch on either side here. So I just kind of want to see how much room I need to allow to make sure everything fits on here. So it looks like I'm going to give myself it's going to go in about 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so that there's about a 3/4 inch space at the end. There'll be a 1 inch on either side. Okay, so let me move those to the side. I'm going to remove the backing to this. And I did use the score sheets where I could, and then I filled in with regular strips of score tape. I'm telling you what, those sheets are awesome. It's such a time saver. They're 8.5 by 11. She also has 6 by 6 too. Alright, so I gotta make sure my ruler is straight. There's 1 inch. And I'm gonna go in about 3/4 of an inch. And that should be enough. It won't, that'll be okay. And I'll turn this over and burnish in a minute. So now I'm going to place this piece, the 2 by 6 next. Again, I'm going to put it so that it's about 1/8 of an inch apart. I'm not going to put score tape in between. I'm going to use the spacer. And you know what? I wonder if these spacers are the same. I bet I could use this as a spacer. What is this? I think I will. Is that this going to be about 1/8 of an inch? Sure is. I'm going to use that. I think I knew that, but I forgot. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move my ruler down a little bit. Still with an inch border down at the bottom. So I'm going to place my spacer, and I'm going to bump that right up against it. Well, that worked out nice and handy, didn't it? Ooh, I like it. Okay, and then the last piece, again, we'll do the same spacing. So this is just going to look like a regular cover, and then we'll add the sides. Okay, that was slick. So now I'm just going to turn it over and I'll do my burnishing. Throw away my scraps here and clean up my area as I go. So I am going to miter, whoopsie, I'm going to miter my corners. You can do the squares if you want. I want the angle. You know what? If you guys don't have this handy dandy tool, you could just put this spacer right here and cut at an angle, and you'd have just the right amount of paper to cover that corner. If you don't like the squares and you like to angle it like I do, this would be perfect. Get my scraps out of the way. So then we'll go ahead and place the 1/4 inch score tape around the perimeter of our chipboard. All 4 sides. Okay, I am going to stand the book up on its side so that I can get that crease. I'm going to burnish it over just so it folds nice. That's easier. I think I left a little bit more on this end than I did the other end. Alright, so now I'm going to place my score tape around the perimeter of my paper. Now if you want to wrap it the new way, you are more than welcome. A lot of you have another technique that you use for making box. Go for it. It's whatever works for you. Like I said, I am on a mission to find the best box making technique. And I'm still on that mission. I haven't found it yet. I don't like how the box or the chipboard lines up, and sometimes there's gaps, or I don't know. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Okay, so then just like if you were doing, we're going to wrap all of these 4 sides into the center. So I'm going to get my glue ready so that I can put the glue up against the chipboard. Now you do need some sort of space between here, because if you don't, your paper will rip. You don't want to go any smaller than 1/8 inch. Sometimes I think when I do a 1/4, I get too much space, and I see some like loose paper. I don't know how to describe it, but I don't know. Here we go. Just putting that glue up against the chipboard, filling in this space here with some extra glue. When you bring it up and over, forcefully push up and out so it lays flat, and then we'll go ahead and burnish that. And I am going to stand it up and do the side so it's smooth. I do the long sides first, so I'll do this other side next. Now one good thing, the way we make this camera box, you won't see a lot of where the connecting pieces are on the box. So if you don't do it perfectly, it's okay, because it'll be covered. And so no worries. You'll never know if you're struggling, because it'll be covered. I'll show you. I have a sample that I made, but I'll show you what I mean. So because it's rounded on these corners, you won't see the side of the box. So it's okay if it's not perfect. I mean, I like it to be perfect, but. Okay, now I'm going to pinch these little corner pieces down. Remove this backing. After you've made so many covers, this goes way faster. Pinch that down. So see, even though we didn't have a full inch, it's still going to be totally fine. Last one. Pinch those sides down if you didn't do the squares. And again, it's fine. It's not the full inch, but it's covered so there won't be any raw edges showing. So it's good. So I'm just going to start creasing this, kind of pushing in the paper. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Now I do want to cover this with a piece of paper so that we don't see any of the chipboard. Even though you'll have your book in here and you don't necessarily look way down inside of a box, we still want it to have a finished look. So I'm going to go ahead and take the piece that we cut, that is 5 7/8 by 4, and I'm just going to place that here. And then we'll have to retrain it to fold again. Get all my scraps out of the way. Now again, you can choose to cover this whole thing with score tape. I'll do a lot of it, but I'm not gonna do every inch of it. I always do the perimeter. So that it lays nice on the edges and won't come up. Now remember, I also want to do the sides of the chipboard, and I'll fill some on the inside too. I don't go all the way to the ends because we don't want the tape to show. And sometimes I think when you use glue it gets a little ripply looking, and I don't want that look, so I'm just going to fill in a couple here in the center. Make sure that we burnish that. And now I'll fill in some more in here, just a few. I think I'll go the opposite direction. That might give our paper some strength when it's the tape going one direction and another direction. Now I am going to put probably a little bit of glue in here so I have some wiggle room. I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off of all of the tape. And this one. So if you are choosing to make this or making another one and you use different paper, I think it would be cute for like a honeymoon, you know, like when you go on your honeymoon and you have all those pictures of your vacation. That would be cute to make a camera box. The album might not be big enough to hold all of those types of pictures, but maybe the highlights. A graduation gift. Put some pictures in there of all the different grade levels they were in or of their party. All right, so we want to make sure we have the same amount of spacing. So it will be a little bit firm as we bring up the sides. Now I am probably going to cover the inside before I put the sides on, because when we put the side pieces on, it's going to wrap to the outside. So it's okay to cover the inside before we attach the side pieces. Okay. Still good, no cracking. If it's cracking, it means you put it too close, the chipboard too close to one another. Or it could be the temperature that you're working in too. Okay, yep, no cracking. Nice, nice, nice. All right, so the next part, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and cover the inside, and then we're going to attach our side pieces like so. It's coming together. So let me go ahead. Your cutting guide will tell you what size pieces, or you can just remeasure if yours is a little bit different, and I'll come back and we'll do the sides. I use the blue solid on the inside. Like I said, measurements are in your cutting guide. So we're going to move this to the side and work on the side pieces. So I've done one just to kind of give you an idea of where we're going and what it's going to look like. The chipboard pieces were the 2" by 4 1/4 pieces. And in your cutting guide, it's going to tell you you need 2 pieces to cover it. And so I went 2 inches. You want the full 2 inches of the chipboard, and then 4 1/8 because we want to put it all the way down to the bottom, and you just have a little bit of showing up top. Okay, so let me show you how I did this, because I did it the way Tammy, so we used to do it like this, and the chipboard corners were covered really well. So once I changed the method that I was doing, I was having a hard time, the chipboard was showing. So I'm going back to the old way of how Tammy used to do it, because I'm having better luck. So this is what we're going to do. The paper is 5 by 6 1/4. We need a 1" border at the top and the bottom. I'm going to remove the score tape backing, and we're going to have 1½ inch sides. So 1½ inches on each side of our chipboard piece. So I'm just going to lay out just so I can get a pretty good idea. I should have my what do you call it, my board out, my scoreboard, but I don't. Okay, man, those things are handy. All right, so just like before, we're going to go ahead and burnish the sides. All right, so here's the deal. We are only going to cut out the 2 squares at the bottom, not the top. So just take out the corners at the bottom, like so. Okay, so that's what we have. Now the top, like I said, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to turn it around. I am just going to put a little piece of score tape here. And right here, while I've got it out. So on these squares, we're going to cut at the diagonal. They're actually rectangles. We're going to cut at the diagonal and take a triangle off, like so. Same on the other side, just cut from the upper to the opposite corner to take off a triangle. This way it covers the chipboard way easier for me. Okay, so we're going to put glue in this middle section here and fold it over. So I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off. Come on, backing. There we go. Up against the chipboard, and then all in this center. It's a trapezoid, in this trapezoid part. One set of parallel lines. four-sided figure. Okay, so bring it up and over, and you are going to burnish it real well. Kind of mold it around that chipboard. We want it to have a real firm hold. Okay. So now it's time to do a slight miter. So what I'm going to do on top and bottom is just very slightly miter at an angle. Very slight. Okay, so there's the bottom. I slightly mitered the bottom, and I'm going to do just a very slight miter on this piece. Okay, very slight. I'm going to take a slight angle here. And see, so now our chipboard is fully covered and looks much better. Okay. Let me move scraps. Alright. I can't stand having scraps all around me. Let's see. Okay, so I have already inked my paper. So I'm going to glue it to the chipboard now. And again, you want it to come all the way to the bottom. That way you won't see any of the chipboard when we attach it. So I'm going to line it up at the bottom. Like so. Okay, I'm going to do that to my other piece as well. I forgot to slightly miter right here and right here. Now I did already ink this. I've been using faded jeans for all of my inking. I wanted to use a bright, fun color rather than more of a brown tone, so I went with blue. Okay. Now we're going to do one at a time, obviously, attaching it to the box. And you're going to have to be patient and work with it a little bit so that it lines up to the best way we can get it lined up. Okay. I'm going to use glue for this part because I want to have some wiggle room and some time. Okay, so I'm going to bring back the box, and what's going to happen is we're going to place this side, this flap, on the underneath side. That's why we haven't put pattern paper on this side yet. Okay, and we were going to line it up, and then these flaps will go to the outside so that it's like so. Okay, the flaps are on the outside and the bottom. So we want to look at our box. Now again, it's going to be covered, but the straighter we can get it, the better. Okay. So I am actually going to attach the bottom piece first. And it will get pattern paper on top of it, which will help it stay secured. Okay, and I'm just going to lay that so when I bring this up, I want to make sure that they line up as close as possible. So I do see a little bit of a gap down at the bottom, but I'm going to be able to live with it because we're going to be decorating it and you won't notice. Okay, so because I have a little bit of space here so that it can wrap around the box. So see, there's just a little bit of a gap. Okay, so now I'm going to place glue. Actually, don't get too close to that chipboard. Go about 1/8 of an inch away. And I'm going to do one side at a time. Wrap it around and burnish. Okay, getting glue on my fingers. And then let's do the other side. And see, it's more important to me that they meet at the top. It's okay that there's a little bit of a gap here because it's at the bottom and you won't see it and it'll be decorated. So I think I'm liking this a little bit better. So now let's put glue. Okay, line it up. I'm going to stand it up. Burnish it real well. And see, because we put the blue way down, oopsie, you don't see any of the chipboard down there. Okay, and let's do the other side the same way. Place that on the bottom first and then bring it up and around, and then we have a box. Okay. Box is ready to have the rounded pieces put on where we'll store our pinwheels. These pieces were the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then you're going to have 4 pieces of your pattern paper that are 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. There's going to be one on the inside and one on the outside, and by adding this, boy does it make it firm and sturdy. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and adhere our paper to the front and the back. I'm just going to use glue here. Do that to both pieces, the front and the back. We have our pattern paper on each side, and because we're going to wrap it around the box, we kind of need to mold it and kind of curl it a little bit. And so this is pretty firm paper. Once you let it set it dry, you're going to want to start kind of bending it or rolling it a little bit in the center. And I'm just using a bone folder. I have a rounded corner on my desk, so I'm just going to kind of roll it back and forth on that. Okay, so that you get a curve to it. And what we're going to do is attach it to the end, and that's where we'll stick the straws with the pinwheels, and that's what makes it look more like a camera because it'll be rounded on the end. So notice you don't cover this first, you're going to put the sides on. So I'm going to put about 1 inch overlap. So I'm going to glue about 1 inch of this paper onto the front. I want it to line up at the top. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and put glue on the actual box about 1 inch in. Okay, and then I'm just going to place this on top, making sure it's lined up, and then I'll press down. I'm going to go ahead and get a clothespin for the top so I can work with this part down here. Just burnishing it real well. And And then we're going to do the same on the back. We're going to put about 1 inch. Okay, so now it is time to add glue to the back. You know what, if you want to, I'm going to do mine afterwards, but you could put your pattern paper on this side piece first and then wrap this around. I'm just going to go ahead and stick mine in after I've got it wrapped because I don't have it cut yet. So you can do it either way. It might be easier to do it now, but it's not going to be that tough to stick it down in there afterwards either. So again, I'm going to put glue about 1 inch thick after I can get my glue unclogged. Okay, there we go. And like I said, this paper got really strong with the 3 layers, so it should be real durable. Okay, I'm going to bring that around, make sure it lines up at the top. I'm going to press for a second. Sorry, I'm out of camera. And I'm going to go ahead and add a clothespin at the top. And I'm just going to burnish this real well. Because it is so thick, you got to take some time to make sure it's down real securely. Okay. There we go. And then we'll put our pattern paper on top and our camera lens and make our side pieces. It's coming together. All right, we'll move on to the camera or the pattern paper on the front and back. Like I said, you can stick it down the sides. Our album is going to go in here. Okay, and then we'll put like buttons right here to make it look like the clicker thingy. All right, so let me get my paper cut. Now that we have our paper on our box, it is time to start adding some of the embellishments. So the red and white gross grain ribbon, I cut 4 of them at 4 1/8, and there's going to be 2 on the front. That one looks a little bit short. I don't like that one. 2 on the front and 2 on the back where the 2 meet. You should have a metal container that's going to be glued right here. In that metal container, I cut from the cut aparts using a 1 3/4 inch circle punch, and I'm just going to glue that down at the bottom. You have a container of buttons. You want to shake them up a little bit because there's some little beads down at the bottom. Because of weight, they go all to the bottom. And we're going to put some of those beads in here to make it a shaker. Now you might want to glue a couple of the buttons just so that when it's sitting up straight and all the buttons fall to the bottom, you at least can see a couple of them. When we put the lid on, there's both red and black felt rickrack. I have all red, but you guys have red and black. I use the red on the cover of my book, but whatever you have left over, we're going to glue to the side here. Okay. So that's how we're going to wrap some of this embellishing up. I am going to also add a strap or a handle. So I'm going to use my We Are Memory Keepers Craftology, and I'm going to use the larger hole, and I want my string or my handle on the side, and so I'm going to just stick that in there and punch so that I have a hole, and I can add some seam binding. I still have some of my blue seam binding. And I will just feed it through the circle, 2 ends, and then tie a knot and have the knot to the inside so that we have a little bit of a handle hanging down here. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you? I still have some embellishments. You'll want to look at the pictures that are included in the cutting guide and in your kit so you know how I embellished, but we still have some ephemera that we can add here and there. Once we have our camera lens on, I'm probably going to place a sticker on some of my red paper and just have it kind of hanging off the side. So the embellishing part is the fun part, and this is also where you can kind of make it your own too. And like I said, we need to add a couple buttons, a small, a medium, and then a large, and then a medium. so that they stand up and it looks like the camera button. So I will come back and show you what everything looks like now once I get it all glued down, and then we should be able to wrap things up. Alright, you need to add some buttons to the side here. Let me show you how I decorated the front. I ended up not doing a long strap, but I did put the seam binding in, and I used the tag from the ephemera, and I attached the birthday cake charm. Used some of the cut-aparts. I used that stapler, the Tim Holtz stapler, and attached some of the leftover grosgrain. I cut this out from one of the cut-aparts, made a bow with the seam binding. This is still a little fogged over because I used a hot glue gun to attach it, and so once it's not foggy, you should be able to see inside. On the back, I just added one of the cut-aparts and a couple buttons, added some of the stickers just to add some excitement in the back. So that's where we're at, and then it's kind of hard to see the way my camera is, but this is what it looks like so far. And then now we just need to add the, I almost forgot the what do you call them, pinwheels, and then those will be coming out the sides here to add some excitement. So last thing we have to do is the pinwheels, and we'll get ready for that. You'll have your 6 straws and your 6 brads. You'll need 2 pieces of 4x4 paper, and then let's do 2 that are 3x3, and we'll make our pinwheels with that size. Nope, let's do 4 that are 3x3. So lastly, we need to do the pinwheels that we use to decorate the sides of the camera. You should have received 6 straws. Before you do any cutting of the straws, because you want graduating sizes, I'm going to have you press down on one end and flatten the end about 1 inch so that it's easier to attach the pinwheel. So I'm just burnishing it down flat. Okay. I cut some small circles. I think these are 3/4 inch. You don't have to have these are optional. You're going to make 6 pinwheels, and I did them in graduating sizes. So I did a 4x4, I did 2 of those. I did 2 that were 3.5 by 3.5, and 2 that were 3x3. And pinwheels are really easy if you've never made them before. You're going to be cutting up on a diagonal from the corners, but you're going to leave the center intact. So some people draw lines with the ruler. I just eyeball it, so I know that I need to go from this corner, and I'm going to go almost to the center but not quite. Now if you're going to err on the side of cutting, I would cut farther away from the center than closer, because you don't want your pinwheel to fall apart. So you can see about how much I have cut up to. There's about a finger width to the center. Now I'm going to do the other 2 sides. Okay, so that's how much I left in the center. So you're going to need to make some holes. So you want to find the center of your pinwheel, and I'm just using a piercer, and I'm just going to put in a small hole. And then I have a real small hole punch, and you're going to go every other corner. So punch, leave alone, punch, leave alone, punch, leave alone, and you're going to go to the edge, but you want to make sure you don't go too close that the paper rips. Okay, so about like so. So then on, oh, look at that one dropped out. This one will not get a hole. So then as I turn it, 1 hole on the edge here, don't go too close to the center or to the edge. Every other one. Okay, so now I'm going to take my burnishing tool, and the corner that has the hole punched, we're going to take our bone folder and kind of train the paper to curl a little bit so it's easier to make the pinwheel, just on the end that has the hole that we punched. You can ink the edges if you want. I am not. And so this is where the nails sometimes get in the way, but what we're going to do, you should have received some brads. You should have 6, and they're small, but you don't want big ones. So So what I do is I place the brad in one of the holes, and then I'm going to bring that to the center and just keep adding to the brad the ones that have the holes. And it is easier to make the bigger ones than the smaller ones, I'll tell you that right now. And then put the last hole in there, and then holding on to all four of those, you're going to push down and bring them to that hole that we punched in the center, and then open up the brad. Okay, now some people just leave it like that, which is totally fine. I'm going to go ahead and cover this with one of my circles. So what I do is I put one down, then I glue the stick on the straw, and then I glue another one on top. That's optional, you don't have to, or you can just glue this and then glue one on top. I don't know why I glue two, but I do. So I'm going to do, like I said, I think these are the 3/4 inch circles. That doesn't, I mean, you can do whatever size you want as long as it covers the brad. And I'm going to use my hot glue gun for this, especially adding the straw. So I'm going to give that a second to dry and to cool off. So because we want the graduating sizes, once you have all of your pinwheels made, I have one of each size on each side of the camera. So I have a 4, a 3.5, and a 3-inch pinwheel on each side, but I want them to be graduated so you can see all of them. So I went and put them in the camera and decided how much I wanted to snip off of the straw, and I'll show you that in a second too. I think I took about 1 inch off for each. Not the biggest one. The biggest one I left the regular size, I think. I'll double check. Alright, so that feels pretty dry. So you might want to look at your pinwheel if it's directional, or to see if there's a certain way you want it to go. I'm going to go ahead and glue it this direction, and so I'm just going to place some hot glue, and I'm going to put that right like so. Press down, give it a chance to dry. Now the front we're going to put a circle too. Let me show you one just so you can see what I'm talking about. So I did put that one's red so it's hard to see. I put a circle on the top too, and then we have so many extra buttons that you can put a button in the center. If you have a lot of extra ribbon or seam binding from something, you can wrap your straw so it's not plain white and make it, you know, wrap like a barber pole. Okay, so that feels pretty good. So now I'll put the other circle on top. So I'm going to put the glue on top of my straw. So we want to cover that up. I'll give that a chance to dry also. Now I haven't tried using art glitter glue. You can try it. I don't know if you just have to hold it a little bit longer. Okay, so there's the back. So now the front, I'm going to place a blue one in the center, and it won't go all the way down to the center, the one I have, but it's close enough. I mean, it's a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to place some glue on top of that brad, and then I'm going to push down on it till it dries again. And then I'm going to decide what size button I want. Now I plan on showing you everything done and put together. However, it's kind of hard with this project the way my camera is set up. So I will, you know, I have still pictures, and the pictures are also in your cutting guide. Okay, so now I think I want like a medium sized button. That one will work. And then once again, I'm going to place a little bit of hot glue. Not a lot. I don't want it to ooze too much outside through the holes of the button. Just want to make sure that that stays on. So this was the original one I did. Yep, I left the first straw, the tallest one, the way it was, and then I snipped off about 1 inch off of each one below that, so you can see that way when you put them in the side of the camera you can see them better. Okay, so let me place these in, and I'm going to try and lay it on its side so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. It's kind of hard. And then the album goes inside. Okay, so let me just do a quick walkthrough of the album, and then I will wrap things up. So I left this open so you could see that something can slide underneath. I made this so that you could open it and put some journaling or a picture. Inside the pocket I just did cut aparts, and on one of them I made into a folded card type thing. On the front then you have, it opens, but it also comes out. Tied closure. I don't take as many pictures for birthdays, so actually the size of this album is perfect. Then on this one, this is our card that goes into the side of the book. I only covered the front so that you can put pictures on the other parts. Then it opens and you have a place for a picture here. Put the belly band. I have 2 cut aparts there right now. And then to keep that from flapping open when you put the card back in, it just slides in, and then you're going to tuck it underneath. I gotta turn it so I can see what I'm doing. There you go. And then it just repeats. So here is the card front, and I left this open so you could put a picture. Nothing on that. And it opens for a picture, and here's the belly band that's holding 2 cards. Then on this side we have another one of the, just like the first page. This comes down, this goes up, and then it opens. Okay. Tie that back up. This I left open to be able to put a picture. This is a flap up, and then the pocket holds cut aparts. Okay, this is what the front looked like. I did double mat the cut apart, put buttons on here. There's the red velvet rickrack. You might have black instead. This side I tried to make it look like a camera button, or yeah, and then I just layered 3 buttons that were progressively smaller. Here's the back. All right, so then that just fits nice and neat inside of the camera box. You can always go back and add more pinwheels if you want. And like I said, there were pictures at the beginning. Just go back and refer to that, or look at your cutting guide. So I hope that you found this to be a project that you could use, that's versatile. You can use it again, just use different types of paper. I hope you're enjoying the Craftology subscription, and continue to watch Country Craft Creations for more tutorials.